Water is perhaps the most precious resource on Earth. All living things require water to live, and humans are no exception. We use it not only for drinking, but also for sanitation, electricity production, farming, bathing, cooking, and hundreds of other daily uses. For many years, Arizona's government was able to distribute water and water rights without severe issues to the people living in the state. But with people flocking to Phoenix more than any other city in the U.S., and especially with burgeoning industrial-scale farming in the area, Arizona is on the verge of a water crisis. The impending shortage of water cannot be blamed on the government, but our state system of water rights distribution will make the crisis worse by doling out rights in an unjust manner. Our system is set up in such a way that many people will fail to access water they need during a shortage, and some even risk litigation for accessing just enough water for basic utility without a permit. When normal or rainy weather conditions prevail, water rights are given precedence by utility as determined by the Arizona Department of Water Resources. This ensures that the least beneficial causes are addressed last, and important sectors like agriculture and sanitation services always have access to the water they need. This works well for Arizona, and there is often an excess of water, which usually gets sold to California or another place where it's in high demand. The priorities change for some people when a drought or shortage kicks in, though. Utility companies, private residences, and all non-agricultural sectors continue to operate under the rules of priority by utility, thus guaranteeing that households are some of the last places to get their water cut off. As for agriculture, it is outlined in Arizona law that during years when a scarcity of water exists, owners of lands shall have preference to the water for irrigation according to the dates of their appropriation or their occupation of the lands, either by themselves or their grantors. The oldest titles shall have precedence. And that's from the Arizona Revised Statutes, Title 45, Section 175. This law sets up new farms and ranches for failures during a shortage. Established agricultural operations will receive water first, meaning the longtime residents of farms and ranches in Arizona won't need to worry about being able to water their crops. Newer operations, some of which feed thousands of people, will be toward the end of the line for receiving irrigation water when they need it most. Naturally, everyone can't always have the amount of water they want, especially when there's less than usual. Wouldn't it make sense, though, to make sure agricultural operations get the water they need before water parks do? The food grown on these lands feeds not only the residents of the land, whether directly or indirectly through earned income, but many thousands of people in Arizona and thousands more in other states. The system of rights allocation during a drought needs to reflect the importance of this industry by giving it higher preference in times of shortage. Continuing the priority by utility system during a water shortage would make the most sense, as more frivolous uses of water, like water parks, golf course maintenance, etc., would be cut first. This would have the double benefit of affecting the least essential sectors of society and affecting more people less severely, meaning fewer people lose big in this scenario. Fewer farms and ranches would be forced to shut down, and food production would take less of a hit. That isn't the whole story either. The environmental effects of Arizona's water rights policy must also be considered. Arizona seems to have a problem catching up to its peers in the western U.S., who are creating incentives for conservation and implementing laws which make it easy to divert water back to natural channels. A few years ago, Stanford University published a study ranking Arizona's water rights laws last out of the 7 Colorado Basin states in measures of environmental impact. Why is Arizona doing so poorly compared to its peers? The main problem is that it is difficult to voluntarily transfer water back into natural channels. Many times, people apply for the maximum amount of projected water they will need for their operations, but they often don't need the entire claim. With this in mind, even when there is a shortage of water, these individuals or companies will want to divert some of the water back into natural channels or allow other claimants to access the water. This should be an easy task in theory, and one that allows for decreased water consumption in the state. But there is some bureaucratic red tape that prevents Arizonans from transferring their water rights whenever they see fit. Title 45, Section 172A1 of Arizona state law states that no severance or transfer shall be made unless approved by the director of the Water Resources Department. This means that the director of the department must sign off on every transfer of water rights in the state. Granted, the previously mentioned Stanford study found that few states had seen many water rights transfers, but this is after taking into account the difficulties of such transfers in Arizona, Utah, Wyoming, and Nevada. However, the study also gives Arizona a reason to be hopeful, as it found an active community of conservation organizations and state agencies working together to restore stream flows and reach voluntary agreements with irrigators. Arizona legislators have at least prioritized the basic needs of those living in the state. If you live in one of the 5 active management areas of the state, Prescott, Phoenix, Pinal, Tucson, or Santa Cruz, which cover a considerable majority of Arizona's population, then you have no reason to worry about your water supply. These areas have been monitored for their water use since the 1980s, and the Arizona Department of Water Resources expects that these areas will achieve net zero or better groundwater extraction by 2025. So what are the policy goals? What specifically can be done to change this system of water rights to bring greater benefit to Arizona? The first and most important fix is to scrap existing law for water rights priorities during a shortage, replacing it with the priority system based on utility used at all other times. This will allow our agricultural sector to remain in better working condition during droughts and ensure that people still have access to the water they need for personal use, while only cutting off water from the places society needs it least: golf course sprinklers, water parks, etc. The other glaring problem with Arizona's water rights system is that it makes environmentally friendly water and water rights transfers difficult. If lower-level employees were authorized to sign off on rights transfers, Arizona could surmount this issue easily. If all it takes to put water back in aquifers is a phone call, as opposed to a week of processing papers and appealing to the director of the Department of Water Resources, then this state might begin to catch up to its peers in the West in terms of environmental protection. If the Arizona legislature passes these 2 reforms, the food supply chain will be at lower risk during a drought, new farmers will be able to continue living off their land, and the people most affected by a water shortage will be those who use it for non-essential purposes. A properly designed priority system based on utility would ensure that all of the vital functions of society which depend on water, agriculture, firefighting services, sanitation, etc., would remain unaffected even in the worst of droughts, while guaranteeing residents are able to access enough water for personal use in their homes. By making just 2 changes to existing law, the Arizona legislature can markedly improve its water rights system and greatly benefit the residents of Arizona.